Welcome back, tennis fans and sports enthusiasts from every corner of the globe. Today we bring you news that is not just massive. It is historic, groundbreaking, and deeply significant for the entire tennis world and for every Filipino fan watching from home or abroad. This is official. This is confirmed. And this is a milestone that will be remembered for years to come. Alexandra Eala, the 20-year-old Filipino phenomenon who has been absolutely electrifying the Women's Tennis Association Tour, has officially secured her place in the main draw of the prestigious BNP Paribas Open at Indian Wells. And she is not arriving merely to participate. She is walking into the Indian Wells Tennis Garden in Southern California ready to go to war against the most formidable names this sport has ever produced. We are talking about a star-studded, championship-caliber field. Defending champion Mira Andreeva, world number 1 Aryna Sabalenka, the relentless and clinical Iga Swiatek, reigning Australian Open champion Elena Rybakina, and world number 5 Coco Gauff. Every one of them has descended upon the Coachella Valley, and now Alexandra Eala's name sits right alongside theirs. This is not a wild card story. This is not a tale of sneaking through qualifying rounds just to say you made the draw. This is the story of a young woman who has climbed the brutally unforgiving ladder of professional tennis with her own two hands, rocketing to a career-high world ranking of number 40 and earning her rightful place in the main draw of what the tennis world universally recognizes as the 5th Grand Slam. To fully grasp the gravity of this moment, you have to understand what the BNP Paribas Open truly represents. This is a WTA 1000 event, a tournament that demands nothing short of absolute excellence from the first ball struck to the final point played. The desert conditions are notoriously complex and unpredictable. The dry air and thin atmosphere during the day cause the ball to fly with extra pace, while the heavier evening air can completely transform the feel and speed of the courts. It is a tournament that tests physical endurance, tactical intelligence, and raw psychological resilience in equal measure. And right now, coming off a blistering run through the Middle East swing, Alexandra Eala has demonstrated convincingly that she carries both the armor and the weaponry to not just survive these conditions, but to conquer them. From her stunning comeback victory over Alexandra Sasnovich at the Abu Dhabi Open, to her deep quarterfinal run against Coco Gauff at the Dubai Duty Free Tennis Championships just days ago, Eala arrives in California not as an underdog, but as a battle-tested, dangerous contender that nobody in this draw wants to face early. The significance of her direct entry into the Indian Wells main draw truly cannot be overstated. Look at the trajectory she has been riding since her breakout season in 2025. We all remember the magic of the Miami Open, where she became the first Filipina in history to reach a WTA 1000 semifinal, dismantling heavyweight Grand Slam champions including Madison Keys, Yelena Ostapenko, and Iga Swiatek. We watched her make historic Grand Slam main draw debuts at Roland Garros and Wimbledon. We witnessed her become the first Filipino player to win a main draw match at the US Open. Every single time she steps onto a court, she carries the hopes, the dreams, and the thunderous pride of an entire nation. The Filipino diaspora shows up wherever she plays, transforming quiet tennis venues into pulsating, electric stadiums filled with flags and passionate noise. Now she brings all of that momentum, all of that fire, and all of that extraordinary crowd support directly to Indian Wells. The narrative has fundamentally shifted. Alexandra Eala is no longer the promising junior graduate from the Rafael Nadal Academy finding her footing on the senior tour. She is an established, feared competitor, a player whose left-handed baseline game, characterized by immense power, sharp angles, and an unyielding competitive will, has evolved dramatically into something genuinely world-class. She plays with a strategic maturity and tactical depth that defies her 20 years of age. As we look ahead to the draw running from March 4th through the 15th, the tennis world is holding its collective breath. Who will she face in the early rounds? How will her heavy topspin forehand fare on the gritty plexipave courts of the Indian Wells Tennis Garden? Can she replicate, or perhaps even surpass, the giant-slaying run that announced her to the world in Miami last year? These are the questions buzzing through every press room and every practice court in the Coachella Valley right now. This is a defining moment. This is where legends are forged under the California desert sun. Alexandra Eala has earned her seat at the most exclusive table in professional tennis, and the stage is perfectly set for an unforgettable showdown. Now let's transition into a comprehensive deep dive into exactly how we arrived at this historic juncture, what it means for the broader landscape of women's tennis, and how Alexandra Eala truly matches up against the titans of the WTA Tour. To fully appreciate the magnitude of Alexandra Eala's confirmed entry into the Indian Wells main draw, we have to rewind the clock and examine the grueling architecture of building a professional tennis career from the ground up. Tennis is arguably the most isolating, demanding, and relentless individual sport on the planet. There is no meaningful off-season to recharge. There is no team to absorb the weight of a difficult day. There is no geographical stability, just a punishing year-round global caravan cutting across time zones, continents, and surfaces, week after week, month after month. The sport strips away every safety net and places the athlete completely alone at the center of everything. For a player from the Philippines, a country burning with passion for sport, but historically without the deep grassroots infrastructure needed to consistently produce world-class tennis champions, that journey is exponentially more difficult. The path Eala has walked to reach this moment is not just impressive, it is extraordinary. And it deserves to be told in full. Here's the rewritten version of this section. Alexandra Eala is an anomaly, a genuine trailblazer. A young woman who made the courageous and difficult decision to leave home at an early age, travel across the world, and pour every ounce of herself into perfecting her craft at the Rafael Nadal Academy in Mallorca, Spain. That early sacrifice, the willingness to fundamentally rebuild her life around an obsessive pursuit of tennis excellence, is the foundational bedrock of everything we see in the player standing before us today. When you review her 2025 season from start to finish, it reads like a Hollywood screenplay. It was the year potential finally, explosively, met reality. Eala made the pivotal transition from dominant force on the ITF circuit to a legitimate, feared presence on the WTA Tour. The Miami Open was the catalyst. She arrived as a wildcard, expectations modest, perhaps a first-round win to absorb some experience and move on. Instead, she unleashed a ferocious, fearless brand of tennis that blindsided the entire world. Defeating players of the caliber of Madison Keys and Iga Swiatek requires far more than clean shot-making. It demands a profound, unshakable belief in yourself that cannot be manufactured or borrowed. Swiatek in particular is a psychologically overpowering force, a champion who routinely dismantles opponents before the opening rally is even played. Yet Eala met her intensity head-on, using her left-handed advantage to control the geometry of the court and dictate rallies entirely on her own terms. That run to the Miami semifinals launched her into the top 100 and shattered the glass ceiling for Philippine tennis, proving to a watching world that Southeast Asian athletes can not only compete in a sport historically commanded by Europeans and Americans, but can genuinely threaten its very best. But one magical tournament is only the beginning. The true measure of a champion is consistency. The WTA Tour is filled with players who had one unforgettable, career-defining run, and then quietly disappeared back into the pack, unable to withstand the weight of new expectations, the target freshly painted on their backs, and the grinding, relentless demands of weekly professional competition. This is precisely what makes Eala's 2026 campaign so deeply compelling. She did not exhale for even a moment. She entered the new year hungry and driven, opening with a strong semi-final run at the ASB Classic in New Zealand, then following it up with an exhibition victory at the Kooyong Classic in Melbourne. And when adversity arrived, a first-round exit at the Australian Open against Alicia Parks, a difficult loss to Teresa Valentova at the Qatar Open, she demonstrated the trait that separates good players from genuinely great ones. She does not let losses linger. She resets, recalibrates, and returns to the court swinging harder than before. The Middle East swing told the most revealing story. The Abu Dhabi Open and the Dubai Duty-Free Tennis Championships are premier events populated by the sharpest competition on the planet. In Abu Dhabi, her match against Alexandra Sasnovich was a clinic in mental fortitude. She dropped the first set 2-6 against a seasoned, calculated veteran who understood exactly how to close a match. Most young players would have quietly surrendered at that point, chalked it up to experience, and moved on to the next week. Instead, Eala found another level entirely, taking the second set 6-4, then grinding through a grueling tiebreak to seal victory in the third. That is what separates true top-tier competitors from the rest. The ability to find a way to win when your best tennis has not shown up. Surviving the messy, uncomfortable matches. That is where champions are born. Then, days later in Dubai, she battled through to the quarterfinals to face Coco Gauff on one of the biggest stages in the sport, announcing to every opponent in the draw that she belongs in the second week of WTA 1000 events. That accumulation of high-pressure, high-stakes match experience has primed her perfectly for exactly what awaits her now in Indian Wells. Let's dissect the specific conditions of the BNP Paribas Open and how they intersect with Eala's game, because this is where the tactical picture becomes genuinely fascinating. Indian Wells is widely called tennis paradise, and the breathtaking desert setting certainly earns that title. But the playing conditions are anything but gentle. The Plexipave courts are notoriously gritty. They absorb heavy topspin and produce a high, sometimes jagged bounce that disorients players accustomed to faster, more predictable surfaces. During the day, the blazing desert heat and dry air cause the ball to travel rapidly through the atmosphere. But the slow, grabby court surface creates a compelling contradiction. Raw power alone is never sufficient here. You need heavy spin, exceptional footwork, and deep tactical patience to win matches in this environment. This is precisely where Eala's game transforms into something genuinely dangerous. Left-handed players produce spin profiles and angles that right-handed opponents simply do not encounter on a routine basis. The ball behaves differently off a left-handed racket. It kicks in unfamiliar directions, disrupts timing, and forces constant positional adjustments. Eala's heavily top-spun forehand is a particularly devastating weapon in these conditions. She can arc the ball deep into the far corners of the court, pushing opponents well behind the baseline where their leverage and power are severely compromised. Her capacity to generate enormous revolutions per minute allows her to swing with full aggression while keeping the ball comfortably within the lines. And the high bounce at Indian Wells has historically rewarded exactly this kind of extreme Western grip, heavy topspin game. Look no further than how Rafael Nadal, the very man whose academy forged her development, has mastered similar high-friction conditions throughout his legendary career. Her game plan against right-handed opponents is as elegant as it is brutal. She hammers that cross-court forehand relentlessly into the ad-court corner, kicking the ball high above her opponent's backhand strike zone and forcing short, tentative replies. Then she steps inside the baseline and punishes with cold, measured precision. Her physical development has matched her tactical evolution. Her movement and court coverage have improved dramatically over the past 12 months, which matters enormously at Indian Wells, where the slower surface produces extended, physically punishing rallies that turn matches into endurance contests. Eala has visibly strengthened her lower body, giving her a more explosive first step and the stamina to sustain elite-level intensity deep into 3-hour battles. Her defensive instincts, the capacity to absorb heavy pace, reset under pressure, and redirect the ball down the line, will be rigorously tested against the big hitters lurking throughout this draw. And what a draw it is! Let's examine the key potential matchups, because each one presents a fascinating tactical puzzle. First, there is defending champion Mira Andreeva. Young, supremely intelligent, and armed with phenomenal counterpunching instincts and a remarkably high tennis IQ, Andreeva is a fellow prodigy navigating her own rapid ascent. A collision between Eala and Andreeva would be a spectacular preview of women's tennis's future. Raw, heavy left-handed power against brilliant, surgical precision. Then there is world number 1 Aryna Sabalenka, who plays an overwhelming brand of first-strike power tennis capable of physically removing the racket from her opponent's hands before they can establish any rhythm. Against Sabalenka, Eala would need a high first-serve percentage and would need to use her left-handed slice serve wide into the ad court consistently, keeping Sabalenka moving laterally, disrupting her balance, and preventing her from planting her feet and unleashing that devastating groundstroke game. There is also Elena Rybakina, the 2023 Indian Wells champion, who possesses arguably the most effective serve in women's tennis today. A fluid, almost effortless. Beyond all the tactical analysis, we must step back and acknowledge the deeper psychological and cultural weight of Alexandra Eala's presence at this tournament. We are living through a genuinely transformative era in global sport. For decades, tennis was largely the domain of specific wealthy geographic pockets of the world. Athletes like Eala are single-handedly redrawing that map. Every time she walks onto a court, in California, Dubai, Paris, or London, she carries the immense pride and burning hope of an entire nation with her. Filipino fans are renowned across the tennis world for their passion, their volume, and their fierce, unconditional loyalty. When Eala plays, something shifts in the air. The match stops being a polite tennis occasion and becomes a vibrant, electric celebration of national identity. That crowd energy is not merely emotional backdrop. It is a real, tangible competitive force. In those suffocating pressure moments when the lungs are screaming and the legs feel heavy, hearing thousands of people chanting your name in your native tongue can deliver exactly the surge of adrenaline needed to push through. But carrying a nation's dreams is always a double-edged sword. In a recent interview, Eala spoke candidly and bravely about the darker side of her rapid rise, the flood of misinformation, the fabricated narratives spreading across social media, and the relentless scrutiny that descends upon a high-profile public figure at just 20 years of age. Maintaining elite competitive focus on a tennis ball traveling at over 100 miles per hour while simultaneously filtering through that volume of noise is a uniquely modern challenge that no previous generation of athletes has had to navigate in quite the same way. Yet Eala handles it with a grace and maturity that is genuinely remarkable. She has urged her supporters to be discerning and to seek out reliable information. She has kept her inner circle deliberately small and tight, channeling her energy entirely toward what she can control: her preparation, her effort, and her execution when the match begins. That capacity to silence the noise and anchor completely in the present moment may ultimately be her most lethal weapon of all. As the opening rounds of the BNP Paribas Open arrive, the anticipation has reached an absolute fever pitch. Alexandra Eala's name in this main draw is not a footnote buried in the tournament program. It is the headline story dominating every conversation on the grounds. She is no longer the hunter scrambling to make her name known. She is now the hunted, a seeded ranked player with a target firmly planted on her back, recognized by every single woman in the locker room as a genuine threat. The transition from underdog to established contender, from promising prospect to feared competitor, is the most difficult psychological bridge to cross in all of professional sport. It demands a complete recalibration of mindset. You are no longer playing with the freedom of someone with nothing to lose. Now there are points to defend, a ranking to protect, and soaring expectations to meet on a weekly basis. But if there is anyone built to navigate this crucible, it is Alexandra Eala. She has proven time and again that she does not shrink under bright lights. She expands into them. She is not intimidated by the legends of this game, because she has quietly, resolutely decided that she intends to become one herself. The Indian Wells Tennis Garden, with its sweeping mountain vistas and notoriously demanding conditions, is the perfect coliseum for her next great chapter. Whether she storms through to the second week or encounters a difficult early draw against a top seed, her presence here as a direct entrant is already a monumental achievement, for her personally, for the Philippines, and for the continuing unstoppable globalization of professional tennis. Every serve, every volley, every hard-fought baseline exchange will be watched with bated breath. The tennis world is watching. The Philippines is watching. Alexandra Eala has arrived in the desert, and she is ready for war. As we bring this deep dive to its conclusion, let's take a step back and appreciate the full magnitude of the picture we are looking at. What we are witnessing is not simply a series of tennis matches. We are watching the real-time evolution of a sports icon. Eala's journey from the courts of Quezon City to the grandest stages of the WTA Tour is a masterclass in perseverance, strategic development, and raw, undeniable talent. She has dismantled geographical and historical barriers, proving that with the right dedication, elite training, and an unbreakable heart, athletes from any corner of this globe can rise up and challenge the established order of professional tennis. The weeks ahead at Indian Wells will be a true and rigorous test, a genuine barometer of exactly where her game stands among the absolute elite of the sport. The desert conditions will push her physical limits to their edges, and a star-studded draw will demand her sharpest mental acuity from the opening ball. But regardless of how the scoreboard reads at the end of these 2 weeks, her trajectory remains pointed unmistakably upward. She has already planted her flag in the world's top 40 at just 20 years old, a staggering achievement by any measure. And she is competing with a level of confidence and tactical sophistication that promises many more thrilling, memorable victories in the years stretching ahead of her. Her left-handed firepower, her vastly improved court coverage, her extraordinary clutch instinct under maximum pressure. These qualities make her one of the most exciting, most essential viewing experiences in the sport today. For the fans, this is a golden era. We have a front-row seat to watch a young phenom carve her legacy into the sport, stroke by stroke, match by match. The roaring crowds, the dramatic 3-set thrillers, the pure, electric joy of watching a young woman from Quezon City conquer stage after international stage. This is precisely why we love sports. Alexandra Eala is carrying the flag high, and in doing so, she is igniting the dreams of an entire generation of young athletes across the Philippines and far beyond its shores. Pick up a racket. Dare to dream impossible dreams. Thank you for joining me for this comprehensive breakdown of one of the most exciting stories in tennis today. Keep your eyes locked on the courts of Indian Wells from March 4th through the 15th, because you will not want to miss a single second of what is about to unfold. The desert is heating up, and Alexandra Eala is bringing the fire.